A Guten Erev Shabbos. Occam's razor is the idea that the simplest explanation is the most logical and sensible. They say when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. Although in our times people love a good conspiracy theory, so sometimes it's a hard sell. It's also not always right. It's just a suggestion of which explanation among many has a strong argument in its favor. Occam was a man, a churchman and thinker in 1300s England, and the idea of a razor suggests slicing away all the extraneous information, the conspiracy theories. But Occam wasn't the first to say it. The Gemara in Shabbos posits the idea, Ein mikra yotze miyadei pshuta. And Rashi mentions this numerous times, and we keep in mind whenever we study, no verse departs from its simple meaning. In other words, a verse means what it says. If it says, don't make idols, that means don't make idols. If it says, do what is just and upright, it means you should do what is just and upright. I heard about a student stuck for Pesach at an American college campus with very little resources available other than the campus liberal rabbi. The report that got to me was that the student didn't want to sing a song about matzah. They wanted to eat matzah on the Seder night. That's the simple meaning of thou shalt eat matzah. We always darshan. We always give deep spiritual meanings because we like to learn. We need to learn life's deeper lessons. We always mention the verse in the first aliyah of this week's parsha, Vasuli Mikdash V'Shachanti B'Soicham, build me a sanctuary and I will dwell among them. Midrash Tanchuma points out that the verse does not say I will dwell in it, it says I will dwell in them. So the drasha is, God is wherever we let God into our space. God dwells among us in each and every one of us. That's certainly true, and the fact is, sometimes we overlook Ein Mikra Yotze Midei Pshuto, a verse never departs from its plain meaning. This verse is also talking about taking materials like wood and wool and gold and silver and making them into a sanctuary where we can worship. That's important on at least two accounts. Number one, because the Mishkan itself, that tabernacle, that portable sanctuary, is obviously a central idea in the life of our people. That's number one. And number two, because this is also an instruction for us in the care and feeding of our synagogues, our shuls, which is also obviously of central importance. Let's look at the second question, then the first. A touchstone of my youth, the movie Fiddler on the Roof, doesn't have much to do with the shul or the rabbi. The movie takes place really with Tevye talking to God as he's going on the road. He's making his milk deliveries, or the daughters doing laundry in the yard of their house, or in the barn feeding the chickens and Tevye wishing he were a rich man, or in the house around the Shabbos table. And really, that is where Jewish life is lived, working our jobs, feeding our families, celebrating Shabbos together. In the opening scene, if you remember tradition, there's a view of the shul and of the rabbi. And he's asked, Rabbi, is there a proper blessing for the czar? A blessing for the czar, of course. May God bless and keep the czar. You remember it? Far away from us. And he chuckles at his own wit, as rabbis often do. But that's about all you hear from the rabbi until there's a chuppah. Then he does his bit. He moves on until there's a question about mixed dancing. Okay. The rabbi, by the way, is played by Tzvi Schooler, who was a great Yiddish actor and comedian who used to read the news on WEVD, the New York Yiddish radio station, and he would read the news in Grammen, in rhymed Yiddish verse. Fun fact, he also plays Woody Allen's father in Love and Death. But it's noteworthy in this movie that not much takes place in the shul or involving the rabbi. And since Shalom Aleichem probably had a much better sense of life in the shtetl in Russia 150 years ago than we do, we have to accept that that reflects a certain reality. Life, by and large, was not in the shul. It was in the marketplace and the roads and the kitchen. And then again, what is Tevye's wish? If he could have anything, if I were rich, he sings, I'd have the time that I like to sit in the synagogue and pray, and maybe have a seat by the eastern wall. And I'd discuss the holy books with the learned men 7 hours every day. That would be the sweetest thing of all. So really, what Tevi is saying, the ideal would be to make the shul or the base medrash, the house of study, the center of life, but it just wasn't feasible for a poor milkman. Now, as far as I know, though, none of us are poor milkmen, so we have a little more time to sit in the synagogue and pray and learn. And making the shul or the base medrash, we're supposed to make that the center of our world, the center of our life, the center of our community. That's the lesson drawn from building this mishkan, this portable sanctuary, and placing it at the center of Machane Yisrael, the Jewish community, even as we move through the desert. We need to stay together and keep God at the center, even as we make our way through exile, wherever it may take us. That is just what we've always done. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abbreviated version of the Code of Jewish Law, says that when we conduct ourselves with respect and honor of the shul, we fulfill the mitzvah in Parshas Kedoshim coming up in a few weeks, which says, "You should revere my sanctuary, umikdashi tirau." It says further that when you daven, you should make every effort to daven with the tzibur, with the community, in the place where they daven. It's highly meritorious, says the Kitzur, to daven in a shul or a base medrash, even at those times when a minyan cannot be gathered. It's still better to daven in the shul, which is a place of sanctity, as its name of sanctuary clearly says. Better that than to daven at home. Okay, daven at home is also good. Then we get to the serious business in the last subsection of chapter 12 of the Kitzur, dollars and cents, or rubles and kopecks, whatever it is. Kitzur clearly writes that those who live in a community may require of each other, which means you can levy a fee or a tax on community members in order to build a shul and to buy books to study. In places where there's no regular minyan, members of the community can compel each other by means of fees and charges to come together to form a minyan daily, so that there is that community prayer on a regular basis. Even students are required to come to make the minyan, even though this interrupts their Torah learning, because, as it says, there's a time to learn and there's a time to daven. So clearly having a shul in your community, and not only having it, but also going there, frequenting the shul, means showing up and davening and learning there, is a paramount value in Jewish life that we're meant to place at the very center of our world. Rav Ezra Bick from Gush points out that the shul is commonly referred to as Beis Knesset, Beit HaKnesset, which is from where the Israeli parliament takes its name. That's a separate conversation. Ideally, that very coming together, bringing people together, is the point of having a shul and the force which helps create its holiness. When we come together, God dwells in our midst. Remember, the Jewish people are called Knesset Yisrael in many places, the gathering together of Israel. So one Jew alone is a Jew, 100%, able to move mountains. But Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people gathered together, that's when we can change the world. Rav Bick writes further that prayer is not just communication, it's not sending a text, it's actual meeting. We're meeting God. Our presence encounters God's presence. That's a very different thing. And when we do it together, we truly reflect the divine image, because all of humankind is made in the divine image. The more there are of us, the more we're able to reflect that. To underscore the point, the fact that we always phrase our prayers in the plural, even when we're alone, shows us that the ideal state of being is Knesset Yisrael, the gathering together of Jews, even more than Yisrael, one Jew. We say in our prayers, give us of your wisdom, your knowledge, your understanding. Heal us, and we shall be healed. Gratefully we acknowledge, bless us with peace. By the way, we also say the negative things as well, right? Forgive us, for we have sinned. We're truly all in this together. The last few months have taught us that in a harsh and bitter way. Hopefully, we'll continue to make the best out of a terrifying situation, and hopefully, that terrifying situation will end very speedily. And the drasha level that we mentioned at the outset is very much part of this parsha and the ones that follow it too. That our goal, our task, our calling, and our mission as a nation is to take the world around us, take the wood and stone and wool and silver and copper and all the other raw materials and transform all that into a sanctuary for God to be present here on earth. Ah, you're asking, isn't God here anyway? Yes. And when we specifically invite God in, when we make space, when we seize the opportunities around us to transform the regular into the holy, the plain into the heavenly, that's a different level of inviting and welcoming the divine presence. We want and we expect a lot of God. People have all these questions and concerns about how could God this and why doesn't God that and where was God this? To which we can turn around the question and ask, we know God is everywhere. Maybe the question is, where are we? Where are you? Isn't it possible that God is asking of us, how can they let this happen? Where are human beings when their fellow humans are suffering? Why aren't those who choose to do evil, why aren't they held to account, called to justice, according to the system that I, the Lord your God, gave you? So in these parshas, at this time of year, where we talk about constructing space for the holy in this world, not just the good, not just picking up your litter and paying your taxes on time. That's what's expected of everyone. But more than that, holiness, compassion, kindness, generosity of spirit, a larger vision, coming together, even though we may not agree on everything. That's the mission of Knesset Yisrael, the gathering together of the Jewish people, and our unique calling among humankind. These parshas of building ask us, what in the world are we doing to build that world into a better place? Shabbat Shalom.